נסתובב, נשתה קפה על מעקה, ניתן לרוח ללטף, ניתן ליום להתחלף. בוא נלך בכפכפים כשהאצבע תכוון, כי היום גם החיים הם עוד שיר שמתנגן כמו איזה יום יפה. בוא נעצור את השעון ונחיה ביום יפה כמו ביומנו הראשון. איזה יום יפה, בוא נסתובב מחוף לחוף, כי ליום כזה יפה לא ניתן סתם לחלוף. בוא נפתח את הרדיו, נגביר את הווליום לתקרה, ביום של חופש שכזה הסוף הוא רק ההתחלה. אז נרקוד עד אור הבוקר בין עשרות האנשים, כי לא עולים בכלל ביוקר דברים קטנים שמשמחים כמו איזה יום יפה. בוא נעצור את השעון ונחיה ביום יפה כמו ביומנו הראשון. איזה יום יפה, בוא נסתובב מחוף לחוף, כי ליום כזה יפה לא ניתן סתם לחלוף. נחייך, נשכח לרגע כל דבר, כי ביום כזה יפה כל מתחיל הכל נגמר. איזה יום יפה, בוא נעצור את השעון ונחיה ביום יפה כמו ביומנו הראשון. איזה יום יפה, בוא נסתובב מחוף לחוף, כי ליום כזה יפה לא ניתן סתם לחלוף.
Thank you for joining us today at our JNFuture Leadership Development Initiative. Please note that all attendees during the main portion of the program will be muted. If you have a question for Russell or our other professionals, please send it in the chat. After the presentation, we will open for Q&A. Should you have any technical difficulties over the next 45 minutes, rest assured there will be a recording. For optimal viewing, please make sure you're in speaker view, not gallery view, which can be found in the top right corner of your screen. If you're interested in learning more about Jewish National Fund, please contact Stephanie Altman at saltman@jnf.org. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to start by saying it's my honor to support JNF in Israel with all of you today. My name is Chad Holtzman. I'm from Philadelphia and I'm on the JNFuture National Board, but it's great to be moderating for the West Coast, Best Coast today. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you Russell Robinson, the Chief Executive Officer of Jewish National Fund. For those who don't know Russell, he continues to climb the Jerusalem Post 50 most influential Jewish leaders list, and he's the individual steering JNF to become the #1 charitable organization to support Israel. Not only that, but he is the mind behind making sure that every JNFuture has a seat on every task force, on every committee, and in every room as all the other lay leaders. And he's not just saying that. I heard him speak last night to Florida at 7 p.m. He spoke to the East Coast a few hours ago, and now he's speaking to all of you on the West Coast. And this is day 1 of the new campaign year, so it's arguably the most important day. And finally, and probably most significant, he is a great and phenomenal role model to all of us. So welcome, Russell.
Thank you, Chad. And welcome to everybody taking their lunch and time from this and coming together with us.
A deafening applause I heard, and here's how today's going to work. We've surveyed over 24 JNFuture chapters around the country, And we've come up with the 5 most commonly asked questions, and I'm going to ask them to Russell now. That will take about 25, 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A with all of you. So save your questions for the end and don't be shy. And JNFuture, for those who don't know, are for individuals 40 and under, and we raised over $1.25 million for JNF last year and continue to be the fastest growing group of donors for JNF. That's enough for me. Let's get started. Russell, what do you see as Jewish National Fund's greatest success in 2020?
So look at we just closed up the campaign yesterday. So the success, Chad, comes out that we're going to hit over $100 million on this year's campaign, which if you would have asked me 7 months ago what was going to happen, I wouldn't have had that answer. I think that that brings us to about $727 million towards our $1 billion campaign. The most, I think, important part of that number statistic is about JNFuture. And I'm not saying because you're on the phone, I'll say it over and over. And it's not over the dollars only that you raise a lot of dollars. It's that we keep increasing the number of donors. And to me, that is the significant number that we have to keep thinking about as leaders. You know, the Jewish world has a very interesting mantra. The customer is always wrong. Let's keep telling the customer they're wrong. And then we'll write articles about how wrong they are. And then we'll keep doing the same thing over and over again. What I believe we have to do is the customer is always right. You have a framework in which you have to work in, but you have to listen to the customer. And in the finest way to looking at our donors, our partners, is that that's who you are. And you have to have that involvement. So in 2020, that campaign, you know, we pivoted. We 7 months ago, who knew anything was going to like this would happen in the world? Who knew how long it was going to last? But the army that we were able to put together is you. Thousands of volunteers, Chad, and all the people here and thousands of people across the country who didn't also know what was happening, but we made over 10,000 phone calls of our donors. We call them, Saul Liesebrand, our president, makes us call partners, and I think he's right. We made 10,000 phone calls just to say, how are you? To keep in touch. And then we pivoted and put these Zoom calls together that were, you know, thousands of people on some, 25 on others, but all the time. And they're always online and people happening, virtual Shabbats that you're holding and we've been holding. And raising the flag of Jewish National Fund in the midst of everything that was going on, we made sure that we were also giving the conversation. We felt the organization was important yesterday, it was important today, and it'll be important tomorrow. And so our significance is that we were able to tell that story. We were set up for this. We were set up as a business. We invested the dollars properly to have a business system. And we didn't go into paralysis, and we allowed the conversation of Jewish National Fund to be continuing and moving forward.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the success for JNFuture is we've become a very inclusive group, and we've broken down borders. And you know, in Philadelphia, I'm able to talk to all the West Coast chapters today, and it's just another way that we can grow as a community. Next question: what have been some of the most impactful ways JNF stepped up in Israel to help our affiliates through the COVID pandemic?
So, you know, again, I think it's a business model, and I'll keep stressing this to people over and over, and you should as leaders keep stressing the business model, because nonprofit is a tax status, not a philosophy. And too many times nonprofits take it as a philosophy, you know, like, well, we're nonprofit, so we don't need to run that way. No, you need to run like a business. It's a family business, but you have to look at it, you know, the profit loss, you have to look at it in evaluate it, you have to do data analysis, and you have to manage your finances in the right way. So Chad, we have American High School in Israel. Some are graduates of it. Some have friends who've gone to it. And when this broke out, we had 230 teenagers sitting in Israel. Now, if those of you know what Muss High School, we had kids from LA, from Seattle, from Dallas, from every point of the United States. We had a couple of day schools. The tickets were coming back at different times because it was different semester breaks. So we had 230 kids, and as I said, about 558 to 650 parents, depending on how many they had, and people weren't sure what was going to happen, but we knew we had to get the kids home, and they weren't answering the call at El Al and United, and planes were full, but our finances were so well managed that we were able to get our leadership together. We made a decision, and we chartered a flight. And we chartered that flight within 24 hours, and within 48 hours, we had our kids home. And most of those parents gifted a gift back to us to pay for it. That means that they still paid for their other flight that they haven't got reimbursed for, but they made it. And the kind of relationship that we built is the business relationship. That's COVID-1, getting our kids here. Then remember, in Israel, you should know how we operate. We're running hundreds of different programs and projects in Israel, all the way from the tip of Israel by Eilat, all the way up to Kiryat Shimona. From, we'll talk about it later, the Culinary Institute, to a brand new aquatic center, $20 million one that we're building in the Arava that will be finished, that is unlike anything anywhere in the world. It's a half Olympic size competitive indoor swimming pool that will be 100% off grid if it works. In a place that's 150, 125 degrees in the summer. It's an amazing. Now that, and the Culinary Institute, we're going to talk about our new village. We're going to talk about buildings and projects we have going throughout Israel. And our entire staff to do this in Israel, you should know, is huge. 7 people. 2 of them are clerical, our administrative assistant. 2 of them handle our tourism, which we handle about 8,000 people a year to Israel. And the others are the staff that are dealing with all this. Now, if I call a staff meeting in Israel, I can bring about 65 people together, but we don't pay any of them. You don't pay any. But they all work with us and for us. So when we work with our affiliates, that are small affiliates, it's all based upon our vision and our goal and them implementing the projects and working together. So remember, 1 million people in Israel, within 24 hours, were out of a job, sent home. Many of them were people in our affiliates. You were stuck at home, and they were dealing with the same, issues that we were dealing with. So how are you going to run the programs? What's going to happen to us? Where are we? Immediately, Jewish National Fund put together our affiliates on conference calls, and we were together with them sometimes every day, but for sure every week, conversations, and then they started working together. And we were raising money, and we were keeping them afloat because there were important parts to keep that infrastructure going, because it was important for tomorrow. And we kept it going, and we kept them going. We kept them working together. And so Jewish National Fund was that galvanizing force, not just financially, but emotionally, and brought people together and had conversations. And so we brought from young leadership groups together, having conversations, women's groups together, people. And I'll just end with this. It was the most amazing moment. I think it was about a month into the quarantine. And I got a phone call from a woman who runs one of our therapeutic resilience centers on the Gaza envelope. We're building these resilience center so children and adults that are not facing PTSD, you call it something else because PTSD is post-traumatic. This is everyday traumatic, from those katyushas and sirens going, and children that are bedwetting, and they're doing therapy. And these are people, these unbelievable places. They called. And of course, the first thing I'm trying to think about, they're probably needing some money. They're going to need some help. No, they said, Russell, we have therapists who speak English, and we would love to do therapy. We know that you guys are also suffering something you probably aren't used to. So how can we help you? And I thought, wow, we had these Zoom calls with them. And I said, you can make up the stories about it, but when it really happens, you go, wow, they are us and we are them, and we are one.
That's a lovely story, and it's really amazing to see JNF step up and help our affiliates in this time. And I know from a lay leader perspective, to be able to work with all the different JNFuture chapters around the country, come together, work with our professionals, all in the common goal to support Israel through these tough times. It's been a great experience. And looking to the future, there will definitely be another, probably chaotic event in our lifetime. But now we've been through it, and after seeing you and the other leaders of the organization drive us through it, we now have experience, and so we thank you for showing us the way. On to a more positive note, two of the newest projects that I keep hearing about are the Culinary Institute and the new Beersheba Must Campus. Can you give an update on how those are developing?
Yeah, Chad. So I want to also talk about the Culinary Institute in its relevance. So I'll be very honest. I happen to love to cook. And growing up in a small town, I always wanted to go to the Culinary Institute of America. That was like a dream. But that's not why we're doing the Culinary Institute. There's like a joke going on that it's all for Russell. If I couldn't go there, I'm going to build it. But the reason we're building it is because I want to show you how we pick what we do. It's on vision. And you are part of it. So up in the Upper Eastern Galilee, the greater Kiryat Shimona area, in 1952, the population was, I think, 38,000 or between 32 and 38,000. And today it's down to 22,000. Who's left? The ones who could not leave. It wasn't the ones who wanted to stay, it was the ones who couldn't leave. Surrounded by Lebanon and Syria, the only thing you hear about the whole area is that, how many missiles are going to fall on them, how many this, how many terrorists. And you know what? It's nobody's fault. Most of those people were sent up there in 1948 and prior to 1948 because people made a border. So you just sent poor people up there and we forgot about them. So you studied, lay leaders, professionals, not Russell. And we said, how do we change the narrative? Our goal is to get to 75,000 people. Every project and program is important, but it's not if it doesn't have the rippling effect. If you're just going to do it, okay, it's great. But what is it going to make the difference? So 2.5 years we studied there, we talked to the community. And I don't know if I told this story before to you, and I'll tell it again. There was the mayor who we were working with at first had been there for 15 years. Before him, his brother was the mayor. Before him, his father was the mayor. So you got the story, okay? The city council was made up of, it seemed everybody was the same last name. So a group of young people under the age of 40, 7 of them got elected to the city council out of 14. 1 of them got elected mayor, under 40, single. It was a vicious campaign. The guy who was running against the mayor that was there was putting terrible things out there because here's a single guy. And if he was single and he was over the age of 22, you can only imagine. I'm telling you what was happening on the ads. And when I went up there with a group of lay leaders and we said to them after they won, I know him and I asked him, I said, why did you run? He said, because you came. And for 2 years, you were showing up. And I said to my friends, are we going to sit on the couch and watch this on the sideline? No. Let's get into the game. So we caused a change of leadership. And in that, we're putting a food technology center first. And we got the government of Israel to put tax abatements. So there's companies from China, from all over the world, because the next technology is not your iPhone, it's food technology. It's the whole issue of gluten and dairy, the whole issue of food and protein. And Israel's on the cutting edge of it. So by having tax abatements, companies are going to come up there and in our food technology center, create jobs and opportunity. So if you create jobs and opportunity, you got to have a housing sites. Well, guess what? Kiryat Shimona hasn't even had a housing site in like 20 years. But now the Jewish National Fund Housing Fund is putting in 500 housing sites there for young people to have an alternative opportunity and to living in the, quote, the suburb. A little far out for them, but it's a suburb. Then we found that if your child broke their arm, I'm not talking about, open heart surgery. Broke your arm, you go for about an hour and a half to wait in a waiting room of a place that you would not wait in. So let me ask you, you know, I always say this is the difference between men and women. Most fathers wouldn't know the difference. The mothers would for sure say, I'm not living here. And so we are building our third medical center, like we did in the Arava, like we did in Chalutza, because we are creating the population change, not to build a medical center. And we're working with the community within the Macomb communities, young leaders like you who have come up to Kiryat Shimona and lived there, to make sure we're not leaving the community that was there behind while we're moving in new people. And then the Galileo Culinary Institute by JNF. And if you haven't liked our pages or our Instagram or Twitter, please go on our website and like us and share it. It's an amazing website and it's amazing. We're going to be opening in 2022. And what we are creating is the finest culinary institute in the world. Now, wow, that's a pretty big statement. Kiryat Shimona, Jewish National Fund. Okay, Lior Lev Sarkaz is great, but how can you say that, Russell? And I say that because you can look on this Zoom call, and then you can look throughout Israel, because we have 80 different nationalities. A Libyan Jew marries a Polish Jew. The Polish Jew says, I want cholent, and the Libyan Jew throws zaitar in the cholent. And we create a new food. And we have a Mexican Jew, and then marries a Turkish Jew. And we have so on. And then in Israel, you have a Christian, and you have Arab, and you have Druze, and you have Ethiopian, and you have every kind of nationality. So we get to have a place that after 2.5 years, you can earn a diploma. They will learn from the front of the house, back of the house. You'll learn about business and you'll learn about cooking, but you'll learn at a place that can teach you 80 different nationalities of cooking. No place else in the world can do that. And we're not going to teach winemaking at our campus. You're going to learn winemaking out in the vineyards, and you're not going to learn cheese making at our campus. You're going to learn cheese making out at the goat farms. And I'll just close with this, which I never even knew about. 23 minutes away from our Culinary Institute is a place that creates the second best caviar in the world, made in Israel, at Kibbutz Dan. It's an amazing, second best. Beluga caviar is first, it's the second best, produced and exported from Israel. So you get to learn everything. And the Galileo Culinary Institute will create people who are going to open up restaurants in Kiryat Shimona, move up there. So if you don't want to go for 2.5 years, we're still going to have the JNFuture, Chad. You get to lead a group to do chopping for a weekend and dicing, and you'll learn to cook, and we'll have the tourism, and we'll have a restaurant, and it's going to be an amazing place and get people involved and raise money and be part of it and get scholarships to students that are coming from all over the world. And then maybe we'll even have a dream. When you are, 10 years from now, let's have a dream. You'll go up there and there'll be a student from Syria and a student from Lebanon. There'll be a student from places that we never thought would be, and a student from an Israeli and American, and we'll all be cooking in a culinary institute created by Jewish National Fund.
It's a fantastic dream, and a dream that JNF will make a reality. And I love that you're a chef. I consider myself a chef in training. I can only make 1 or 2 chicken dishes. But I'll tell you what, a lot of you on this Zoom call tonight, I know from our virtual Shabbats. For those who haven't joined, join on the 16th with me. And when this becomes a reality, we'll all sit down at the Culinary Institute together. Dinner's on me, and we'll make it happen. Also, I love the Chalutza communities and the medical center in the Arava, and was wowed that when that was built, that saved people 2 hours of transporting just to get basic medical care. And so I'm so proud that JNF is building another one.
And if I may, Chad, so I'll just take a second to talk about Beersheba. So behind me is a sign. This was Beersheba, 1952. So when we started working in Beersheba, the Jewish National Fund, again, it was about changing the 7-mile river walk that we built, a park 3 times the size of Central Park. Who cares? The Abraham's well that was there behind a locked fence that so far, since we've been open, it's almost 400,000 visitors. Who cares? I'm doing that dramatically. We opened up last month a 29-acre lake, the largest lake in Israel, in the middle of Beersheba. Who cares? we care. We studied, we didn't want to do a river walk or a park or Abraham's. We wanted to change the reality from people leaving Beersheba to staying in Beersheba and growing. When we started, it was losing population, less than 190,000 people. Today it's 247,000 people, the fastest growing city in Israel. And all of that changed the whole mindset. The Abraham's Well, I happen to love history, but the 400,000 visitors, imagine, it's about a person who comes visit the Abraham's Well that has to go across the street and buy a falafel. That's an economic generator. That's our thought process. And the Riverwalk changed the entire vision of what Beersheba was. And the old city, which is the only city built by the Turks outside of Turkey, is in Beersheba. And it's a magnificent place. We put the Lauder Employment Center, have created thousands of jobs, rippling opportunities, working with young leaderships and so on. And then I'll talk about it later, but our new campus in Beersheba is about taking 21 acres and building a new high school, a second high school for us from us. We'll still keep the Hod Sharon, but we are in a great, terrible situation where the seams are splitting. We thought we'd be there in 10 years. We're already there. So we're going to have a second. Then we're going to have a place for college students, gap year, and then college students who graduate who want a year internship. Well, imagine in Beersheba, you have the cybersecurity center, you have Dell computers, you have Intel 20 minutes away. They're putting $9.3 billion in Israel in the next 10 years. You have Wix. So you get to come and spend a year of internship getting paid, living in an apartment complex. It's not going to be a dorm. We're going to build it. We're having a whole, starting this November 15th. So those who want to be part, we're going to have a different focus group with JNFuture, young leaders with college students to see how we're going to plan. We're going to have, if you know architects, we need, we're going to be putting an international contest out, as well as have people that are going to be sitting and voting on the different architectural thoughts, because we're building a whole village that's going to have a conference center for 700 people. It's going to have an adult education center. It's going to have a hotel. We can't call it a hotel. It's against the law. You got to call it a short-term stay living facility, but it'll be like a Marriott courtyard. So JNFuture, major donors can come for a week, use our classroom, use our teachers, learn and have a new conversation with Jews from South America and Jews from Russia and Jews from Israel and non-Jews and synagogue groups and people coming and having a conversation with the Jewish people that is your conversation of tomorrow. It's a conversation not of yesterday. It's a different conversation. And we're going to have it, and we're going to create it, and we're going to let it grow because of all of you. And we had on one of the other calls, they said, well, what about midterm job opportunity changes? What about people want to go get masters and leave and come there? Well, why not build that facility that's there for it? And that conversation of the Jewish people, the newest conversation, the conversation for the next 100 years is going to be 700 yards away from Abraham's Well, where the whole conversation began. And we're going to create the continuation of it.
Great. And for everyone on this call, I know I can't wait to sign on to the internet and the new campus, do my work, but see all the students running around and all the businessmen and knowing that it used to look like Russell's backdrop right now. We have about 10 minutes left of questions, and then we're going to open it up. So start thinking about what you're going to ask. The next question is, what do you see as unique challenges in this upcoming 2021 campaign year?
So the unique challenges of leadership and the unique challenges is that we're whatever this is, okay? This is the new normal. We have to get out of our head that there's local. Because if Sarah wanted to invite Stephanie to come to an event, and she lives in a different city, she would have never invited her to come to LA. And what, you're going to come for a wine tasting? And no. So, but guess what? There's no events in LA. It's this. So if you have friends in Mobile, Alabama, or in Peoria, or in New York, or in Chicago, or San Francisco, you have to think about this new normal that you're going to say, you know what, Chad, I'm going to a JNFuture event on October whatever. Come with me because it's here. And then create these conversations with 20 people, 10 people, so on, that gets people want your leaders. And the reality is that is what the minority of people are as leaders, and most people are followers. And leaders need to ask people to join because that's what people are looking for. And if you're not given that opportunity to join, if you're not giving them the opportunity to be part of these great adventures, if you're not giving them to be part of this great conversation, 50 years from now, and you're in that old age home and they're saying to you, boy, I wish you would have told me about this. What a shame. So you got to ask. Philanthropy is about asking. I know everybody always says that, well, I'm uncomfortable. I'll tell you what, you drive by a food bank, Goodwill Industry, a JCC, a synagogue, you drive by any institution that provides anything for anybody, and I will tell you something, the generation before you gave, and somebody had to ask, because nobody gives without asking. Nobody. It's all about asking people. You could send out all the letters. If you don't ask, they're not giving. And you could say, well, no. It's not true. I gave to the Red Cross because there was a tsunami. No, you saw the tsunami on TV, which caused you to give to the Red Cross. How do I know? Because the Red Cross fundraising during crisis goes way up and then go way down afterwards. If you really believed, you'd keep giving to the Red Cross because you know there's going to be another crisis. Or you say, I gave to cancer research because my cousin. No, your cousin was the ask. So you have to ask. That is what leadership is about. It's not only about the money. Trust me, yes, it is. It is about raising money, but it's about allowing people to be part of this great adventure of creating and changing the world. And our great challenge is that people think asking is wrong. I'm telling you, in all my heart, whether for Jewish National Fund or anything, if you don't ask, you're wrong. You have to allow people to be part of this great opportunity. We're all in the same playing field here. Let them have a conversation and allow people to express and be involved in this and share this great venture that we're in.
I think that's a perfect segue to the last question before we open up to everyone on this call, which is, we've been inspired here today, great words, but all JNF futures on this call are really leaders and they want to act and do. So what are the most important actionable steps for lay leaders to take right now?
Well, I think that, I'm turning on my sound here. I think that you have to, listen, everybody's an adult. So you have to throw out of your mind, I always like this word, well, people, what's it called? I'm zoomed out. So I always hear this from people. I say, well, everybody's zoomed out. And then I hear the next Zoom call we had like 800 people on it. And then I said, well, there was 800 people on that were zoomed out. And then they said, well, those virtual missions, we've had a couple. I don't know if there's any more. So in Cincinnati, Ohio, there's a guy that's having them every week, and 4,200 people were still having these virtual missions. Don't get into the negativity. People are adults. They'll choose to be on or not to be on, or to watch or not to do. That's one. Two, don't allow people to talk about the crisis that is in the Jewish world. Throw that out. It is not true. I'm going to give you a great statistic. Again, you can Google it. First off, I will every time battle people. This is the greatest Jewish community in America and Israel. We have 8.5 million Jews in America. We're growing every day. If you went on YouTube, by the way, for the high holidays, go on YouTube and check high holidays. There was 7 billion services on YouTube. Okay? For a dying Jewish community, I figured we had more services than we had Jews, according to the naysayers. In 1968, there was an article in a magazine called Look magazine. The front page said diminishing Jew. Front page. This was an international newspaper, magazine. And in the article, by great demographic, professors, they said that by the year 2000, the Jewish community in America would be less than 2 million. Orthodox Jewry would be dead. Reform Jewry would be just barely alive, and there would be only conservative, and then within the next 10 to 20 years, there'd be no more Jews in America. So the answer to that is, Look magazine is out of business. We're 8.5 million Jews. We're more dynamic than ever before. We're growing. And don't sell the oy vey. Let's celebrate the greatness that is being a Jew and what we're doing and the changes that we're making, and keep telling the story. Just keep telling the story.
Perfect. Now we're going to open the floor to all of you. Take advantage of this great opportunity. And who has a question for Russell?
Somebody?
I've got a question or an ask here. So Russell, I'm Zach Shapiro. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
So I am on the board here. Thank you for everything that you're doing for JNF. I coincidentally have my JNF cup here, a little hard to see, but really appreciate what's going on. And something I'm thinking about is how we can get back to in-person events, Zoom fatigue or no Zoom fatigue. That's where I thrive. That's what I'm very involved in the Chicago community. There's a number of Jewish organizations. Everyone's on Zoom. And I think JNF has a real opportunity to break into the young professional market. It's easier to tell the stories with new people when they show up. So to your quote from a minute ago, people are adults. I've been to large outdoor gatherings for sporting events, for Jewish religious events, for Yom Kippur, it was beautiful, for political events. I think JNF has a real opportunity here to fill a need. There's a need for in-person human connection. That's not to diminish anything going on with Zoom, but if I can put it in your head right now, and if JNF can be the first Jewish young professional group in Chicago to open up to other people, we can potentially bring in new people that we might not have reached out to otherwise. In Chicago, there's a big JNF, JUF confusion. There's a million Jewish organizations. You know, I've seen what JNF chapters can be in the rest of the country. I want Chicago to be the biggest chapter. And I think having in-person events can make a big difference. So just what are your thoughts on when we can return to it? And if we can hurry up that timeline in any way with people that are comfortable. Obviously, a lot of people are going to sit out. There's a pandemic going on. But I wanted to just take the opportunity, thank you again, and express my wishes to meet with other JNF young professionals or young professionals that are not yet involved, not yet donating in person.
So thank you, and it's a question that we're, like everybody else, wrestling with. There is, you know, no good deed goes unpunished, one. Two is that you always have a public relations issue, and with a nonprofit, unlike a business, or even a political, and a business I'm putting in sporting events and others, is that, you know, if, and I have somebody, you know, with the NFL, if 20,000 people don't show up at Kansas City or do show up, you know, they have a business decision to make. We have to really look at this, and there's all the different views that come from different points. So I'm just telling you that we're looking at it every single day. We're trying to see what is going to be like. If you would have told me 7 months later that, you know, this continued, I couldn't make this whole story up, as any of you couldn't. So the answer is, in short, to be honest, is that I have to look at the whole organization as the piece to it. I know that there's been a couple of golf tournaments, but I have to tell you, the one that happened already, forget that whether it raised money, a lot of money or not money, even the golfers said it wasn't a real nice golf event, because what was the golf event about? It wasn't about the golf. It was about the schmooze and the buffet and the drinking and the talking afterwards that they did away with. And so everybody got a, you know, wonderful, great bag of food and a bottle of wine, but nobody stood around to have what you needed, which is that interaction. That was the success of the golf tournament, wasn't the golf. I could go golfing a lot cheaper than paying a charitable, you know, fee for a golf tournament. So we're going to keep looking at this, and as things happen, we're going to keep making those tough decisions, but I welcome input as we go forward.
We have time for one more quick question if anyone has one. Don't make me ask it.
I can ask one. Hi, Russell.
Hi.
It's kind of similar to a question Chad already asked, but I guess what's something that you've learned that surprised you during this pandemic time so far? Whether it's something you've learned about JNF, something you've learned about how young professionals are engaging with other young professionals in the Jewish space, but is there anything that has surprised you or taken you back in this period?
So I told you this today, Rod, what really took me back. I think that when I saw what happened in Israel as well, when our affiliates went to go pick crops, volunteer for crops that were going to be rotting on the vine, they came and they packed, young leaders packed it and served it to Holocaust survivors and to elderly. That was wow. When I heard the conversations of groups from women and so on, that they're meeting with Israelis and they're really having a conversation that you didn't think that they could have, you know, that there was a real natural kind of organic kind of a conversation. And I think that the way that our people have just come together and continuously come together. Not only am I in Zoom calls like this, but with other leaders across the United States and so on. And I was just on one, literally 5 minutes before this one started, 132 people for our Breakfast for Israel were on a call planning the Breakfast for Israel. I don't know how 130 people were planning it, but the 130, I'm like so blown away by it and so inspired by it. Our national board meetings, Chad's on the board, he'll tell you, we have 41 members of the board. We have like 100% attendance and they're there for 2 hours every month. And I'm just like, I get blown away by how much people really care. And then, you know, it's what I want. I want people's head in the game. I want people in it. I've used some of you and others when we were bidding our pivot plan because you're smarter. You know, Amanda has a question. I got to call on her because I know it's late, but just wait. I'm just going to tell you a story I tell the staff all the time. I think I'm a great CEO. Microsoft never called me. So I figured out something. Did I get to raise money for a great cause and do great things? And then if I'm really smart, I get you to give money and then I get to utilize all your intelligence for free. So forget the $100 million we raised. I think we raised like 200 million because I got to utilize every one of your brains for free. I would have paid millions and millions and millions for this consulting service. And guess what? You guys paid me, us, to do it. And so I got a better job than Microsoft. I got to call Amanda because I saw her ask.
Yeah, well, hello, Russell. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, in terms of the pandemic, you know, a lot of the times we say that like your voice in Israel is the like one of the mottos of JNF, and besides just the affiliates and partners that we already have new things like really come up in terms of like starting new partnerships where there's been like an area of need because of the pandemic versus building upon like Beersheba, and not to say that we're not continuing with our like fundraising and projects that we're already like working on, but just in terms of different things that have come up that might be like another opportunity for our voices to be heard in Israel.
So I'll answer very quickly. I know it's time, but I'll tell you what was a great pivot as well. So small businesses in the Negev and the Galilee were all out of business. I mean, you can imagine what's happening here. They were all in the tourist industry. They're dying. And so immediately we started the mitzvah market, the QVC of the Jewish world, that has really kept you, and I don't take my word, I'll give you the phone numbers of the people that are getting their jewelry and glassware and wines and things ordered, go on our mitzvah marketplace, and people are like, I can't even believe people are just ordering things to order things. I mean, they're beautiful stuff and they're great stuff. So we were able to really connect in ways that we never even thought about. I was on a call this morning with Mitzvah Ramon, a town that we were trying to turn from 5,000. I know if you haven't been there, it's one of the most beautiful places in Israel. It's only 5,000 people. And, you know, we were going to struggle with the plan, how to get people there. Well, the coronavirus and the quarantine made all of it sudden, everybody's doing virtually. And if you're going to do virtually, why not live in a great place like Mitzvah Ramon? So this morning's call was, how do we rush our project in Mitzvah Ramon? Because we're going to make the change because there's so many companies that want to go down there and move. So it's constantly changing and developing and creating, but it's creating together. And, you know, it's getting instructors and teachers in our Beersheba, and Amanda, you're going to be called because we're going to start in the 15th and we want to get educators. How are we setting up the educational institution in Beersheba? What are we doing differently? How's a classroom going to look in the next 25 years? So when we design it, we're trying to be looking ahead of time. And so I get to, again, utilize all of your talents and it's one of the greatest gifts that was given.
So today is October 1st. It's a brand new campaign year. We start our tagline, Leadership Leads. So do what Russell asked and invite people, get your pledges in. Let's all have a great year. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Russell, for taking the time. Our next events, 1 week from today, we have a program on sustainability with a documentary. And also on the 16th, we have our virtual Shabbat, which I know a lot of you attend, but if you haven't been, I'll see you there. Have a great day,
Invite 2 people
everyone.
to the virtual Shabbat, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.